what they want to do is they go, right, now we need to double or triple down. It's hard to double or triple down on referrals because there's a finite number of people that you actually that know, like, and trust you. So you need to go to cold markets.
My special guest today is Matthew Whyatt, the founder and chief strategist of TechTorque. And I'm John Martinka, and this is the Getting the Deal Done podcast. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you very much, John. I appreciate you having me today.
Yeah. Well, let's start with a little bit about you and your background and how you got to where you are right now, and then we'll dive into the value you offer your clients.
Okay. Life story in 2 minutes. Okay. So I started my first technology business when I was 22. And if anybody's watching this on video, they'll know that that's about 1,000 years ago now. And so over the course, and that's 1,000 years in technology world. And over the last, say, 28 years of being in business, I've always been the sales and marketing guy. So my wife and my team ran, at the peak of at that business, first business we started, we had about 70 employees. So I ran the 10 people in sales and marketing. Everybody else is run by other people because I realized very, very early on in my career where my talent lay, and probably also just as disappointing is where my talent didn't lie. And management of people who aren't sales and marketing are not it. So I ran that business for some years. We grew that for over the course of about 10 years, exited that company, took a year off, lived in Indonesia, in Bali, realized that surfing and drinking beer wasn't really how I wanted to spend my time. Even though it sounds like a good idea on the surface, that was not very fulfilling. So I came back and I was brought back into Australia. Now, people listening probably figure out that I'm Australian. But I do live here I moved to the US 4 months ago. So over the course of the intervening 10 years, I've been doing consulting. I was tipped into various organizations as part of the sales maturing process for M&As, which you do a lot of, John, I know that. But also I was brought in to fix sales rooms, sales machines, and bring teams together around that revenue generation piece. So as I said, about 5 years ago, I brought in marketing as part of that consulting, and then grew the business reasonably successfully, which has now allowed me to expand into North America here. So now I help typically B2B software and consulting businesses build their authority through their personal brand, through PR, and also through marketing activities. So we do all the regular marketing activities, but really it's about driving greater levels of revenue for those organizations. How does that? Is that enough info?
That's a great intro about you. And I would assume that even though you specialize in software and consulting, that the things you teach them are applicable to just about every B2B company.
Every B2B company. So I've in the times when I was being tipped into various businesses by the big four consulting firms, I had exposure to manufacturing, mining, real estate, all the major industries. It's just that technology people are my people. I can speak the language if they want to talk about the deep tech stuff. I've got a little bit of an understanding to be enough to have a conversation about it. And so, and what I noticed and what I know from the exposure to my clients, and I know from time, is that the deeper one goes into a particular area, the more specialized the knowledge, and therefore you can charge more and get better results.
Okay. So when we talked before, one of the things I wrote down was from referrals to scale.
Yep.
Let's talk about that process.
Yeah, so a lot of businesses, when they first start, they grow their company. If they haven't necessarily raised capital, they need to bootstrap, and the founder is the one driving a lot of the activity. And so what we find is that they get a lot of referrals because the founder has some type of profile and they're able to grow their network. When businesses come to me and they say, right, now it's time to engage my sales team, engage marketing, they're doing lots of referrals, which is great, and very, very high conversion rate on referrals. What they want to do is they go, right, now we need to double or triple down. It's hard to double or triple down on referrals because there's a finite number of people that know, like, and trust you. So you need to go to cold markets. So that's what we do. We implement the strategy, the go-to-market strategy for those organizations. We help them recruit and or train or manage the first cohort of marketers and sellers in their organization. We write the scripts. We do all of those types of things because a lot of technological businesses and a lot of consulting businesses, they're very, very good at their technical or consulting thing, but they're not necessarily have a strong DNA around selling and marketing, because selling and marketing is a separate skill set than what it takes to build a great technical product or a great consulting product.
Okay. And what are some of the things they do to help scale, to move out of that referral only?
Well, it's about getting super clear about 4 key elements. And these are the 4 key elements I talk about all the time. So first of all, really understanding the target customer and not just demographics as in, we sell to logistics companies in the Midwest doing $20 million or more. We get really deep around and because that's table stakes. That's the basic level of targeting. Then we talk about what are the psychographics? So you've got the demographics here, you've got the psychographics next. What actually is your mission, vision, and values when it comes to marketing? How do you communicate to your customers? How do those customers react to your communication? And then with the use of CRMs and AI and all the tools we have available to ourselves these days, that targeting can be reviewed and customized almost monthly, because you've got that feedback loop of really high quality customers. And also the market is usually so big. In most industries, the market is so big, is you can actually start choosing your clients by having a conversation, having a thought around your supply and demand pressure. If you tell the market about the supply that you have, then demand, if it's higher than that, you can actually start raising prices. So we first of all target marketing. Second of all, your circle of influence. So the second key element is circle of influence. Who knows you? Who can talk about you? And who can represent the brand in the business? And that's, of course, doing the selling before the sales conversation starts. And the third part is your relationship to your clients. And so let's say you've got your targeting right, they know you, and then so you build your circle of influence. Lots of people know about you. Now you've got to nurture that relationship. Certainly in B2B, it's very rarely a one and done purchase. It's usually over time. And Google's now calling it the messy middle. Person becomes product, problem, or company aware. And then they go looking, they go Googling, they find somebody's white paper, they download they review somebody's reels or lead magnet or whatever it might be, and they fall into other people's funnels. And so you might have done the work to generate the interest around product, problem, or company, and then they're going to look for that on the internet and fall into other people's systems. So you need to be able to capture that person's attention and then continually provide high quality, valuable content that allows them to build that trust before the sales conversation actually occurs. Because as I said, Google's called it the messy middle. They become aware, and then lots and lots of things happen all the way along the process until they talk to sales. And sales is often now, seeing I started my first business in 1999. Back in those days, we put an advert in the newspaper. That was great. They would call us. And so first of all, dating myself by talking about newspapers. Second thing, I'm talking about people calling us on the telephone. And then the salesperson would do all the work. They would provide testimonials, and they would provide case studies and demonstrations and build a relationship. Today, salespeople have got to be so on point. They've got to be so good that they've only got one chance to be really great at that time for that conversation, because marketing's done most of the work. But the salespeople are absolutely vital to be really good. And so that's the third part. The fourth element is your offer. And your offer is not book a call. That's a terrible offer. Your offer is not, buy now, unless you're selling water bottles on a B2C. What I'm talking about is the offer needs to be the next logical, low friction step that the customer could take that is a no-brainer for them. And so in a lot of circumstances, my software clients, we've monetized the sales process by offering consulting, because businesses will, because in 2026 and look, actually for the last 5 years and certainly going forward, most people have had some type of poor experience with oversold software. Either the business has gone out of business, or they've changed their pricing, or the implementation was weak and didn't work, didn't provide the value they're expecting. So buying software is really difficult these days, and selling software is more difficult. So what we do is we monetize the sales process by bringing the piece of work, the consulting, into the selling. And so rather than talking about feeds and speeds and ISO 27001 and all that other stuff over here, we then say, okay, well, the answer to the question is, John, I'm not too sure if our product is the perfect fit for you, and neither do you. Until after you've bought it, it'll be perfect. So let's go ahead and engage in a consulting piece of work. We name it, we give it a brand, we sell that piece of consulting work to be able to be a vendor inside the organization, And then B, we can then provide advice from inside the organization and know who the potential people who could say no to the bigger deal. So they're the four key elements. So your target market, your circle of influence, your relationship, and of course your offer.
So with circle of influence, I hear that, and that takes you back to our beginning. We talked about that's referrals, people who can
Yes.
recommend you.
Yep, absolutely. So referrals are absolutely vital, and the better job you do, the more referrals you're absolutely going to get. It's just being able to. Most of my clients have now got to a point where they go, right, I want to double this business. I want to triple this business. I want to really put the foot down, and so the referrals are a wonderful baseline of revenue. And now we need to go to cold markets, and that's where we can actually start leveraging those other ways of having people talk about us. And that's why we do. I talk about circle of influence is the sale that occurs before the selling starts.
Okay, I got it. Uh, so I have an advisory business,
Yep.
small. It's just basically 2.5 FTEs, myself, my daughter, and one guy who's part time. And uh, if I want to grow, and I know in one of what you wrote me at one point was about how teams are using AI. How would a consulting business, advisory business of any kind, what would the steps be to use AI to
Yeah.
to help their marketing and growth and sales and all of that?
So how we do it for a bigger company, I'll tell you how we do it for bigger companies or bigger organizations than yourself, and then how we've been able to use AI to bring the production higher and faster at a much cheaper rate. So in the past, I've been doing to build a personal brand for the consultants in the organization is is of course we interview the client. So I have a background in media and sales and marketing, so I can interview a client, and as anybody can tell, I can talk as well. So uh, so so what we do is we interview the client and we get their take on certain hot issues in the industry. Whether it might be the friction that occurs within M&A when you're trying to bring two teams together. It might be other topics. I mean, I'm sure you've got 1,000 topics in your mind of ideas you can talk about, John. So what I would interview you about that and go through maybe half an hour. Then I would send that recording to professional copywriters, and those copywriters would draw out of that two or three really strong stories written in your voice. And then those two or three stories are the content. And then what we do is we put pillars underneath that content through social media, and we create reels, slides, social media posts, all those sort of things. So we put out over the course of a month, we would put out two or three pieces of content, and then we'd put pillars underneath that content with daily social media posting to continually drive the conversation. And so whether they're standalone posts or people directing towards the newsletter, that's the first step in doing that. So that's what I would do for you. Of course, you're already doing stuff. You already got the podcasts. You're already putting yourself out there, already communicating value to your marketplace. And just by doing the podcast is an incredibly strong way to drive greater levels of awareness. So that's so personal brand, as Gary Vaynerchuk and Alex Hormozi and the people who are really making waves in business today in America. Those guys put out 450 pieces of content a week. And so you can't put out too much content. So anybody says, "Oh, I do one post a week, or I'll do two posts a week, and I don't want my clients to get bored of me," that is laziness and a lack of understanding of how social media works manifest in laziness. So it's a lack of understanding manifest in laziness, and also trying to shrink and be small. So the more content you can put out, as long as it's on brand, on voice, and
Right.
with that. So we used to charge $4,000 or $5,000 a month for that machine. Now what we've done is we've built a product that does exactly that process. Has hot button topics, interviews the client, and it's a conversation backwards and forwards. It then takes that, creates it inside the voice of the customer, and then builds out daily content to be published on, and it can be published on every platform all simultaneously. And we do that using AI. And that product is called Authority Rev Up. This is not supposed to be a pitch about what my product does, but that costs $295 a month.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things when you talk about, they're putting out 450 posts or whatever a week, and will clients get bored with it? Well, my first thought was Yeah, if the clients will get sick of it if they're bombarding their email
Oh yeah,
inbox or texting, but if it's on social media, yeah, we all know of all the people I know that post on LinkedIn, I see a small percentage of those because you have to be there at the right time before it drops way down on the list, etc.
absolutely. And also the new LinkedIn algorithm that came out the last couple of months. It's now a cohesive algorithm. It's called, excuse me, Brew 360. And what that does is no longer, so you can't really hack the system anymore. So the AI that sits on LinkedIn now understands your profile, reads through your posts, and then when you start posting other things, it needs to be consistent with that. And then also LinkedIn, we found is LinkedIn's not addictive like Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. Actually, TikTok's so addictive. I had to uninstall it a couple of years ago because I was just it was too good for me. It was defeating my brain. So I deleted TikTok. But I post to it. I just don't have it on my phone. And so what they do is so the LinkedIn algorithm is now prioritizing people that get saves, that get shares and reposts, and prioritizing and providing reach to people who are commenting on comments. So if you get a comment on your, this is a bit of, thank you for joining my TED talk about LinkedIn here. But if anybody here is getting comments on their LinkedIn posts, make sure you are able to respond thoughtfully, continuing the conversation inside that LinkedIn post, because then you tag that person's then drawn back to LinkedIn. Because if John, comments on Matthew's post, and then Matthew replies, John's going to go look at that post again. That draws you back into LinkedIn and creates a stickiness and that platform engagement time. So the main thing you can do there is make sure more people are commenting, and then answer those comments and continue the conversation. And I did that last year. And I got 90,000 people on. I've got 15,000 people in my LinkedIn connections. But what I found is I reached 70,000 people and got 90,000 impressions because I started to comment and ask questions and communicate inside the comment section.
Okay, that's great advice. It's great advice for everybody. So we also had talked before we recorded about, and I put a star by it, is how to articulate value.
Ah, so okay, so how to articulate value is really through understanding what is important to your clients and what is important to you, because the market is so big. The market is so big here in North America. As I said earlier, I'm Australian. We have the same land size as North America, about 27 million people. Well, I live in Jersey, and in the tri-state area is more than that. So there is significantly more people here, and the market is significantly bigger. So the more narrow you can get, the better you're able to articulate the problems that exist in your market, and therefore your customers are more likely to think that you can solve those problems. So the way that you can deliver value is by really speaking specifically to the people that you work with, and then also not just identifying. Once again, we're talking about target marketing, not just talking about demographics and psychographics, but if you have a look at your database, have a look at the customers over the course of the last 2 or 3 years that you would, as an Australian, sit down and have a beer with. Like, you really like them. And I'm not promoting beer drinking. What I'm saying is in promoting social. How would you go have a coffee with them? Would you go have a cup of tea? Whatever it might be, those people, and then what are the characteristics of those individuals? And quite often when I do this exercise, I had a client who was working with the largest mining company in the world, and they recognized after going through this process that they weren't a great client. They might have been paying the most, but they're certainly not the best client. And so what we did is we changed the way we were selling, and we found much better clients, because life is short. Spending time on people you don't like is not fun. So therefore, and business owners, we can actually choose who we do business with. I only take on 1 to 2 new clients a month. That's it. Other than, of course, my product that I've talked about, but I've spoken about. But I don't. I personally, personal consulting, I take 1 or 2 clients a month. That is it. And so I can choose who I want to do business with. And that's because I am on these types of podcasts and I have these types of conversations. I hope that I'm delivering value to people, and they go, "That's the sort of conversation I want to continue to have."
Okay. So I know one of the bullet points you wrote me was about making things simpler and more effective. And you've talked about some of that right now. But if
Sure.
you were to summarize for people, how do you make it? Everyone wants the simple button. What are some of what are the three things you would do to recommend to potential clients to make things simpler, more effective?
So one of the things that I recommend to clients about simplicity is choosing is choosing the way that we go to market and then executing it with discipline. So I'll give you an example. I doubled my business over the course of the last couple of years because I made a choice. And the decision was that I'm going to do monthly webinars and provide value to people for free. And I'm going to give away all my IP because I genuinely believe that IP is in the execution, not in the ideas. I can go to ChatGPT or Claude or any other AI system, and it'll give me ideas. And of course, those ideas might be middle of the road and not that fantastic, but the ideas anyway. So my idea there is to give away all my IP, appear on podcasts like this, and give freely without holding anything back. But then I deploy that over and over and over again, every single month, month in, month out, over time, and that's what has caused my business to grow. And so when I talk about simplicity, I think about discipline. I think about clarity of message, and discipline to actually execute over the long term. And that's what's caused my business to grow quite well.
Okay. So, Matthew, when you're not doing this, when you're not helping companies scale and grow their sales, what do you like to do? I know you've mentioned beer a couple times.
um, well, I am a member of a club that we get together once a week and socialize. That's absolutely part of it. I'm in a I guess a stage in my life in which my kids are in late in their teens and they're athletes. Maybe not. Well, one of them probably will go D1 in rowing. I wish he'd chosen a sport that actually paid money, but that's not for me to present myself with. But it's 6 days a week, 6 days a week commitments. One's off to Virginia this week for a training camp. The other one, 6 days a week basketball. My boys are reasonably tall and athletic, so I work, and of course I still have Australian clients, so I'm here till late in the evening. And so really that's it sounds a bit boring, but I'm very happy to support my children in the reasons that they, I guess the life that they want to lead. So that's really what I do with my spare time. My wife and I are very, very committed to that.
Great. I know we have four kids, and at one point we had four kids in sports, and it gets frantic, but it's worth it, especially if you're, like I would be coaching, and then so my wife would have the other ones to get around. So yeah, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
So is there anything, as we went through all your materials, is there anything you'd like to get out that we didn't cover?
Um, Not in particular, really, John. I think that covers it pretty well. The four key areas that I talked about earlier. If the listeners just think about that and have a meeting once. So what I teach my clients to do is have a four key areas meeting once a month, and have a think how they're deploying and how they're thinking about their targeting, their circle of influence, their relationship, and their offer. And if they think about that, have 1 hour a month, think about those four key areas, and discipline themselves to do that, what they'll find is much better answers over the long term and much better business, much better, faster growth. Because the more often you measure something, the more able you are to manage it and grow it.
Okay. Well, I know that's good advice, and I'm just not saying that because if, we've all heard this stuff before, that if you have the plan and you stick to the plan, good things happen.
Yep. And there's so many shiny objects out there. There's so many influencers telling you need to have a YouTube channel or a TikTok dance or a unique spin on things. But you know what? Boring discipline. And I'm not saying that my life is boring or anybody's life is boring, but discipline is what gets you there. Kobe, Jordan, I'm living in a past era, of course. You couldn't talk with Steph Curry. These guys show up every single day. I think I saw a thing online the other day. Steph Curry does 500 shots a day and has done so for 20 years. You know what? I bet you he's not loving every one of those shots. I bet you some days he feels like crap. Some days he just doesn't want to do it, but he shows up and now he's the best shooter in the league. And this is my only non-sexy, Instagrammy or TikToky sort of advice is show up every day and do the work that you know you need to do, and the results will come.
Well, isn't that exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about creating content and branding? Is that, you write something, you do a podcast, you comment, yeah, every day. Every day you have to be doing something. And I say every day, meaning yes, you can write 5 posts for LinkedIn and schedule them
Yep.
at once and stuff like that. But something has to be going out there all the time.
All the time. And then you need different modalities of it. It can't just be text, it's got to be image, or it's got to be slides, or whatever it might be. And so that's why we've built that Authority RevUp product, is simply because people just don't have the time. People don't have the time to babysit the stuff all the time. So that's why we've done that product for people. But yeah, and that allows them to have that discipline to continue on with their their marketing, their personal brand building, and then they can run their business themselves without becoming a content creator, full-time content creator.
This last part I think is the most important, not because because it says everything else you were talking about. You just got to have a Nike moment and just do it.
Just do it. Just go do the work.
Fascinating discussion. Matthew Whyatt with TechTorque. And Matthew, it was a pleasure discussing business growth strategies with you. And this is the Getting the Deal Done podcast. And one final thing, how do people get a hold of you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. So Matthew Whyatt. Wyatt spelt with the WHYATT, not the Wyatt Earp spelling, which is WY. So you can find me on LinkedIn, and of course my websites are techtorque.co. And if you want to know about the Authority RevUp product to scale your content creation, that's authorityrevup.com.
All right. Oh, Matthew, it was a pleasure, and all the best.
Thanks very much, John. Talk to you later.